Rose fans, I am super excited. I mean, check it out. We got Andy Kostka from the Baltimore Banner, Orioles beat writer, fresh out of spring training. I think he makes the team. And I just can't wait to get into it with Andy here. It's a special treat. Welcome to Joe Rossano's Orioles Report. Welcome to Joe Rossano's Orioles Report. For Michael Sullivan and Matt Faulkner, I'm Joe Rossano, and we have Andy Kostka, Orioles beat writer for the Baltimore Banner, and just got home from spring training. See, Andy's big time. He gets to hang out with he hobnobs with the stars. I just get to talk to the guy who does the hobnobbing. Andy Kostka, thank you very much for this time.
No, of course. Thanks for having me.
Andy, there has been something that I've talked about on the show many times, to a point where my wife won't let me talk about it anymore. My co-host, Michael Sullivan, says, look, if you're going to talk about that, let me know in advance because I'm not coming on. So I want to ask, when I'm going to call one of the experts, I was not particularly fond of the Grayson Rodriguez Taylor Ward trade. And the reason that I say that, if you dig in the numbers when he was called up in 2023 in the second half till he threw his last pitch in 2024, 18-6, ERA below 4, well below 4, and about a strikeout and a quarter per inning, per 9 innings. That is front of the rotation stuff, so far as I am concerned. And considering the struggle, as you know, Andy, from last season, I did not think they would trade a starting pitcher for an outfielder in his walk year. By all means, Andy, tell me where I'm going wrong here.
No, I think you're on the right track if Grayson Rodriguez is healthy for a full season. And I think that massive if is where the evaluation came from Baltimore of they couldn't say that. They couldn't say with a good conscience that they can trust that Grayson is going to pitch 160 innings or more. And I recognize that he has 4 years of team control. So there is massive upside in a guy like that. The trickle-down effect, they must think very highly of Trey Gibson and Luis De Leon as two starting pitchers that are coming through the ranks right now. Trey Gibson reached AAA last year. Luis De Leon, a southpaw, young international signing. I believe AA last year was the highest he got. They have to feel good about those guys and how they can develop and maybe take the place as a rotation piece in the future. Taylor Ward, he helps from, the right side of the plate against lefties, a lot of home runs. The 228 average wasn't what you wanted, but I do think there is room for improvement in that aspect. I like the way that Taylor Ward handles himself at the plate. He doesn't really strike out. He walks a lot. So those two aspects are major pieces that Baltimore wanted in their lineup. I mean, they wanted to strike out less, looking at what Baltimore did last year and how many times the Orioles struck out. I mean, that's a major red flag for a lineup. Taylor Ward doesn't do that. So could we look back on it in 3 years and say, what an awful trade? Yeah, we could do that. But I do think the reasoning they made the deal is purely because they had a hard time seeing Grayson as a reliable contributor for this rotation this year and moving forward. Purely because of the injuries. It's a gamble. It would have been somewhat of a gamble, less of a gamble probably to hold on to him. But they figured that they could really impact the lineup and not miss that much because they went out and got Shane Baz and Chris Bassett and Zach Eflin back. And they do believe, Brandon Young can be a guy that comes up and maybe starts here and there if there's an injury. They do believe in the young depth they have. That is a long-winded way of saying I hear where you're coming from. I've gone back and forth on it like 14 million times. I truly believe that Grayson Rodriguez is an ace someday. I truly believe it. Unfortunately, it won't be in Baltimore. But I wish all the best for him. Great guy, great family he comes from. And he has electric stuff when he's healthy.
And that's the thing. We always got to use the terms when healthy. Okay. My struggle is on a few fronts here. 4 years of control, one front. Second front is he is, as you know, and as you've said, when healthy, a top of the rotation guy. Okay, 4 years of control. And this is where it really gets me. It's not even the 4 years of control that gets me most. It gets me most here. Why go through all of that trouble of protecting him, letting him be out for a season, the surgery, working with him here and there to get to a point, and then you trade him? I mean, I just thought maybe he needed one more look-see here in 2026. And then you still had 3 years of control if you wanted to trade him. But considering, as you know, Andy, the Orioles were linked to Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, Zach Gallen, a possible trade for Freddie Peralta. None of that materialized. I would have preferred if they did get that piece that was more of the front of the rotation. As you know, Chris Bassett more of the middle of the rotation. I probably would not be as, let's call it, butthurt over this Grayson Rodriguez trade. Now, obviously, time will tell, but oh, by golly, Andy, I just didn't like it, sir.
Totally. I hear you. I think it was a surprise to me when the trade was first made too, because when you boil it down completely, it's 4 years of team control versus 1 year of team control, and like that is
Mm-hmm.
that's the essence of when I look at it. Um,
Yep.
the future value of Grayson is so much higher than it is of a 31-year-old or whatever, Taylor Ward. Um, it was a risk, and we will find out. And being completely honest with you, like there are a lot of risks, right, that the Mike Elias regime has made over the last several seasons, and one of them was this trade. And um, if it goes really poorly for Baltimore this year, there's not really a fall guy, right? It's last year was okay. There was injuries, and then Brandon Hyde was fired. This year, if things go wrong, there probably will be more looking at Mike Elias in the front office. And I don't mean that as like as a I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just being realistic
Just being
of
honest.
this. If this season doesn't go well, like that's the reality.
Yeah. Yep. Well, now speaking of which, okay, Craig Albernaz. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. When they hired him, that was the first I had heard of him. Me personally, if the team 2023, 2024, as you know, makes the postseason. Okay, obviously a down year last year. I thought the Orioles were going to get. And I say this figuratively speaking, they were going to get Joe Torre. Okay, or Casey Stengel. I thought Joe Madden was probably going to be the next manager of the Orioles to get. Respectfully, I wish Mr. Albernaz and his family all the best. But do you think that getting a bench coach from the Cleveland Guardians as opposed to a guy that has a World Series ring, what did you think when they hired Craig Albernaz? And now that you've had the opportunity at spring training, et cetera, what say you now, Andy?
Yeah, I do know that he was a fairly hot name on the um, managerial board, so to speak. The year before Baltimore got him, his name kept coming up as like a guy, teams were interested in. Um, Part of the reason why he got, a promotion to associate manager instead of bench coach is, to give him experience with some of those managerial duties, and also, a little bit of a title raise because he stayed in Cleveland. Um, I'm not sure exactly if he had opportunities to leave Cleveland, but just it was a title increase there. This go around, he was, definitely sought after by a number of teams. He felt like Baltimore was the best pick because it was not necessarily a rebuild, probably. He could step in and fight for a playoff place, and obviously they have big aspirations beyond just making the playoffs. You have to do something in the playoffs too, which is kind of the next step that they haven't done yet. Um, I have been incredibly impressed with him. What I felt Baltimore needed was somebody who could and this is not on Brandon Hyde. And I realize it might come off in that way. This is, Brandon Hyde did a great job building this team from 100 lost seasons, keeping a clubhouse together in 100 lost seasons. That is all fair. But I do think
Absolutely.
that Craig Albernaz in spring training so far has been very demanding with the intentionality of drills. And, as many, the people familiar with the Oriole way would realize is like perfect practice makes perfect, or whatever the, correct way to phrase that is. Like, he wants the reps to be as good as possible, and he's willing to let them know. I mean, just an example, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I guess it was, I was on the field in Sarasota, and Craig Albernaz was running them through situational defense drills, and there's a play at the plate. The so-called winning run was reaching second base, and Samuel Basayo, top prospect, just given a big, contract extension. He doesn't block a ball. He swings his glove at it, and doesn't block it, and the ball goes back to the wall. And Craig Albernaz stops everything, and in front of the entire team, is very pointed and says, like, "Hey," in more colorful language than I'm going to use on this podcast, but basically says, "You need to block the ball. This is the big leagues. Like, block the ball. The winning runs in second base."
None of that Ole BS, right?
Yeah, so it was very, very pointed, very pointed.
Yeah.
And I felt like
There
the
you go. That's
way
good.
the way he stopped a drill to point something out the way he needs it to be done was really important. And 2 plays later, when Sammy blocked the ball and was, he probably was a little tweaked, but made a really nice play, blocked the ball. Albernaz
Yes.
was right there coaching 101 and giving him so many props, saying like, "Hey, you did a great job. Like, way to bounce back." That
Amen.
just like that
That's good managing right there.
one
Yep.
vignette, yes, is exactly what I've liked from Albernaz. I think he holds his players to a lot of accountability. We're gonna see. I mean, this is spring training, right? What is it gonna look like in the dog days of August when Baltimore loses 5 straight games? Because like those things happen in a baseball season. Like, that's gonna happen. There's gonna be, they're gonna blow two games in a row, and everyone's gonna be
Yes.
pissy. What is it gonna look like then?
100%.
So we're gonna learn a lot about him through the course of the season. But from the early signs of who he is, and he isn't one to blow smoke and try to be somebody he's not. He is exactly what he thinks at every point. I mean, he was like, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling this. Like, I know exactly what he thinks about me most of the time, because he found out I hadn't watched a movie and was giving me nothing but grief about it, for not having any culture, So like, there's no surprise what Craig Albernaz is thinking, and I think that's probably the most refreshing thing about him.
And here in Joe Rossano's Orioles Report, we're fans talking to fans, and I'm sure you are too. You just got back from Sarasota, spring training. Can you give us some insight? Like, what does the Baltimore Banner beat writer do in Sarasota? Do you go in the field? Do you play catch with Adley? Do you have coffee with Gunner? I mean, tell us fans. I mean, it sounds like a lot of fun. Give us a day in the life of.
Yeah. First off, I am incredibly fortunate to have this job. I recognize how many people would want to be in my shoes. So if I am ever grumpy, I try to remind myself of like, hey, like this is a dream job for many people, a dream job for me.
Of course.
So that's just, straight off that's a big one. But yeah, the general day is clubhouse access opens to media somewhere between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. As somebody who likes to sleep in, I grumble at 7, when my alarm goes off, and crawl, to the stadium. But that is the only bad part of a spring training day, because everything from then on is pretty awesome. I mean, you get to watch players go through drills, and no, I'm not playing catch with Adley. I'm not getting, coffee with Gunner daily. Those are things that there's more separation, right? There's I go in the clubhouse. The generally speaking, a lot of the team is in there. You get to ask If they have some time, you can grab guys one-on-one, pick their brains about certain things. Some of the best conversations are when you just go up and start talking about something random, like Gunner's dog, and then you find out so much more about him than just like the how are you feeling at the plate, like you get a little bit
Yeah,
more insight when you
sure.
learn their personalities and who they are. After clubhouse, we talked to Craig Albernaz. That's probably about 9:30. From 9:30 until 1 p.m. Backfields, drills, writing whatever articles need to be written. If there's news, like the Andrew Kittredge news, ran back up to the press box, wrote an article on that. Then 1 p.m. game starts. We interview guys during the games, during spring training, which is kind of funny because we miss some of the actual game action when we do that. But and then we write another article about that. So definitely, it is a busy life, but it is incredibly rewarding. And for somebody who's really curious, like I think curiosity is the most important thing if you're going to be a reporter, right? So like there are so many times when I see something that I'm just like, I have no idea what it is. Like a pitch that Cade Povich threw to Leody Taveras in a live batting practice. I was like, I've never seen a pitch shape like that come out of Cade's hand. What the heck's that? Walk up to him and find out he's throwing a gyro slider. Like those are the fun things that you notice something on the backfields and you go ask somebody about it and you figure it out. That's kind of what the day looks like. Then the evening, writing, whatever you need to do for the next day, or, I play a lot of basketball, pickleball down there. Big pickleball scene, as you can imagine, a lot of retirees.
It's
Yeah,
nice
so it's
weather.
fun. Yeah, it's fun. It's a good time.
Well, let me say this. Okay, first of all, I would have shown up at the clubhouse at 3 a.m. with a pillow and slept till 7 a.m. That I am in my mid 50s, Andy Kostka, and let me say this: that is about the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. Wow. What I wouldn't do. I mean, again, we're fans here. I got a microphone and a camera. Make no mistake. I wear the Oriole bracelet here. Wow, 5 minutes. What I wouldn't do. That just sounds wonderful. And, you seem like a modest guy, Andy. And, I, again, read your backstory and such before you came on. You earned every bit of it. They are lucky to have you over at the Baltimore Banner, Andy.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Andy, we do Birdland Mailbag every Friday, and the fans ask some questions. So and make some comments, and they would absolutely love to hear, especially from someone with your insight. But I have two questions that I have to start off with from my
Yep.
co-hosts. Matt Faulkner asks, okay, now you brought up Samuel Basayo, and we all knew that he's probably not an all-star defensive catcher. Okay, and obviously the skipper let him know. Do the Orioles hold a third catcher? Because we assume, Andy, and you tell me where I'm going wrong here, that obviously Adley is the number one catcher, and I imagine that Basayo will DH quite a bit while Adley's behind the plate, and God forbid there is an injury, you are probably going to lose your DH at that point. Do they carry a third catcher?
This is a debate that we've had in the press box like 15 times this spring. If you ask this question to Jacob Calvin-Meyer from the Baltimore Sun, he probably would say they have a third catcher. I say they don't, because I feel like they value positional flexibility more, and having Jeremiah Jackson on your bench. Basically, so if you have three catchers, you're going to be either running with one fewer outfielder than you otherwise would, or one fewer infielder, obviously. I believe that they care more about the defensive flexibility in the infield alignment, especially when you have Jordan Westberg out, Jackson Holiday out for the beginning. So a combination of Blaze Alexander, Jeremiah Jackson, Luis Vasquez could be all in that mix for those bench spots. And if you carry a Sam Huff or a Maverick Hanley on top of Basayo and Adley, and you're right, Adley's going to get probably the lion's share of defensive duties. Basayo will be in the lineup, most days, as a batter. You also have Taylor Ward and like this is a break glass in case of emergency. I'm not advocating for him to get any more than like 2 innings all season. Like this would be a problematic situation.
Right.
You have Taylor Ward, who used to be a catcher before he switched in the Angels system to outfield. So he could, he technically knows how to catch a baseball that's traveling at 100 miles per hour, which is a lot harder than people think because the guy's swinging in front of your face. Like it's actually
Would
just the catching part of it is incredibly difficult because of how much is going on in the movement. So I think Taylor Ward could be that break glass in case of emergency. Plus, Baltimore can have a taxi squad catcher travel with them all season. So if there is right before the game, if they know, like, let's just pretend here that like Adley's dinged up or something, and they know that,
Okay.
and they need to make
Yes.
a move, they could
They can
option
make the transaction right there.
exactly,
Yep.
right there because they already have a third catcher who's not activated, but they have him in the clubhouse already. So all of that is to say, I don't think they have a third catcher on the roster.
Okay. Next question from the brilliant Michael Sullivan, my other co-host, is, and now you may have to be careful how you answer this because again, you see these guys. Ryan Mountcastle. Okay. Let me start here. And I say this on my show all the time. What a shame. What a shame. 33 home runs, 2021. I thought he was rookie of the year. Okay. And obviously it's been a struggle for Mountie since then. Now, this season, the Orioles gave him $7 million, and there is an option for next season, considering again the Pete Alonso and Samuel Basayo may get a couple of reps at first base. We definitely have a log jam over there now. Kobe Mayo, I guess, Westy comes back healthy in May. Then you have another option with Kobe Mayo at first base. Why did they give Ryan Mountcastle the $7 million?
In my mind, Baltimore is so the other option would have been non-tendering him or trading him before the arbitration deadline. Those are kind of the other ones they could have done. In my mind, everything we know about Mike Elias has been that if there's potential value in a player, he is not going to be willing to non-tender a guy, most likely, because he'd
Right.
rather get value from them either for his own team or via trade. So Mountcastle and I still think there's. Let me start with if Mountcastle is on this team. I still think he can be a great pinch hit bat in left-handers on the mound situations. Late in games, he can give Alonso a day off his feet with Alonso at DH, but we know Pete's probably going to play like 160 games because that's how he does. So I still think even at $7 million, I mean that's just your third year of arbitration. Generally with his track record, that's a pretty fair market price actually. And then the team option gives Baltimore flexibility depending on what they want to do next year. But it also, if it's getting late now, it's March 6th as we're talking at this exact moment. A trade, might not happen in spring training, but let's say at the deadline, if Baltimore wanted to flip Mountcastle for, let's say, relief help, they need like another back end guy. The fact that he
Okay.
has a team option, it just increases his value so much. Teams are going to be more willing to give up a better whatever pitcher, let's just say in this instant, because there is a team option. He's not a rental. So I think from that aspect, he gives Baltimore the option of, hey, what if he really finds his power stroke again and the left field wall isn't impacting him as much as it had probably last year and he's not injured. Maybe he's a dynamic bench guy, can come off like a Ryan O'Hearn in 24 or whatever, like that's that's an option. But then at the same time you could you have more value in a trade because he has an extra year on his contract.
Which
is why I think they kept him. Yeah.
Right. My Ryan Mountcastle question to you, and do your best here, the Orioles beat writer. What happened to Ryan Mountcastle? Again, 33 home runs, showed quite a bit of promise. Even today, he is, in my opinion, Gold Glove caliber defensive first baseman. Is it, Andy, that he is just not very selective, that you don't have to throw him a strike? Is that where the struggle in your mind has come from? Or is there anything that you've seen either in the season or at spring training that you could say, this is what happened to Ryan Mountcastle? I'm dying to hear this.
I think a lot of it was I'll blame two things. One, injuries last year. It's a lot harder to get your timing back at the plate than I think people realize. Just with when you're not playing for a little while. So I think that is like a very realistic thing. Two, I don't think anyone has been impacted more by the left field wall than Ryan Mountcastle, and pushing it back as far as it was. That
I've heard
impacted
that one.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that impacts him. And as much as Ryan Mountcastle says, and I've asked him this, does that get in your head? As much as he says no, and I know should take him at his face value word that no, it doesn't get in his head. That is, he had 5 or 7 fly balls that would have been homers the year before that were outs.
Sure.
You can't
Would
tell
be
me
in
that
my
doesn't.
head.
Yeah, you can't tell me that. And I know he's saying the right thing. I know it's not in his head, but I do think there is an aspect there of, wow, I'm either going to have to hit this 500 feet to left field, which is not that. Then you're starting to get into, you're probably going to be swinging at bad pitches because you're throwing your head out of there, trying to get as much, power on a swing as possible, or you're, trying to think, I need to completely change my approach and I'm going to have to hit to right center field. My power is going to be the opposite, power alley, which he can do. We've seen that before. And today, I mean, he's having actually a very good spring training. I think we've seen a lot of good contact from him. So I think he's in a good spot. I still believe in Ryan Mountcastle. I think he is, as you said, a fantastic first baseman. And there will be some situations, and Pete Alonso may not love it, but I think there will be situations late in games when it's like a one-run game where you'd rather have a defensive, switch, and you'd rather have Ryan Mountcastle at first base, 100%. And I recognize that you didn't, pay Pete $155 million to come out late in the game, but I wouldn't be shocked to see that at times because of how good Mountcastle is defensively. All that is to say, yeah, I mean, he was probably pitch selection was a major issue as well. And that's probably a trickle-down effect of trying to do a little bit too much at the plate. Everything is interconnected at this level, though. So there's a lot of, timing can be part of that. Timing is off a little bit. Well, then your pitch selection looks a lot worse because you suddenly only want to swing at fastballs, and you start taking, hang breaking balls that you would have hit 430, 2 years ago, things like that.
Couple of questions and comments from the fans, Andy, before you depart. Because again, I assume you can respond and answer these better than me. Birdland Mailbag with your pal Joe Rossano here. So this from Daniel Hubbard, 9107. I'd like to see Bradfield soon. The dude is scary fast. Yeah, he needs to hit a little bit, but if he could get to 215, his speed and defense will make it all worth it. As for Kjerstad, you've got Ward and probably O'Neill for one more season. We're going to need him. Do we see Bradfield in 2026?
Yes, I believe we do. September at the latest, but I would go so far as to say, midsummer, we would see Enrique Bradfield. Completely agree with, I forget his name. I apologize, the commenter, but completely agree with the sentiment. Like, we know that Enrique is not going to hit with a 900 OPS. That's okay. He is a Gold Glove defender in the outfield. Will be a Gold Glove defender in the outfield. His singles can turn into doubles with his steals. And when he is on, just imagine if he's on your bench and you have a 10th inning and the ghost runner's on second base and you pinch run for Enrique Bradfield. holy fright, like anything that lands anywhere could be the walk-off. It's the speed is scary and you can't teach that. Well, to the extent, that he has it. So I think Enrique can be a very quality big leaguer, purely based on his on-base percentage. I mean, you look at his on-base percentage, and I'm actually going to get it for you right here, because I want to make sure I'm correct. I believe this is Double A, so it's probably going to go down a little bit in Triple A, but his on-base percentage in Double A last year was 393. I'm like, that's incredibly high. So if he finds a way to get on base anyway, maybe not with a
that's pretty high.
393 OBP, but if he's pretty much, if he's far above 3, that him on base at that clip is pretty amazing. So I do agree that we'll see Bradfield in Baltimore. At the very least, maybe September call up with, defensive replacement ability.
All right, Edgar, you heard it here. Okay, so this is a good one. Unfortunately, Heston Kjerstad is Matt Stairs. Respectfully, Andy, you may have to Google that one. Yeah, I'm just joking. A left-handed pinch hitter and DH. With the predominance of right-handed pitching, he will find a team that values that player. He is likely traded for very little. God, I miss Kyle Stowers. What do we make of Heston Kjerstad? I mean, does he make the team?
Well, on opening day, no. You miss that much time. He has options. I imagine that he's not making the opening day roster. Heston Kjerstad is an interesting conundrum because I have believed in his ability for a long time at the plate. We've seen it. We've seen it in bits and pieces at the major league level. The concussions were scary. I mean, let's just be honest. Like that really impacts somebody.
Of course.
I don't really think he is a high level fielder, but I think he could probably be league average in left field. I think you take the league average in left field with mostly DH days if his bat is as good as we think it can be. The big question though is, as I think that the previous commenter and this question, both say is like, there's a lot of outfielders right now, and if you have a healthy Tyler O'Neill, and I realize it wasn't a good season for Tyler O'Neill last year. Injuries played a role. He wasn't very good when he was healthy. If he is better this year, it's going to be more difficult to find playing time for everybody else. You have Dylan Beavers, who definitely needs playing time somewhere in that outfield, and you have Taylor Ward. So it's going to be tricky. But I do imagine that injuries happen. Somebody will be injured at some point, and having somebody like Heston Kjerstad ready to pop up to the majors is going to be a very helpful thing at some point this summer. I just don't necessarily see it happening on opening day, but it doesn't mean that Heston Kjerstad is not going to be, in Baltimore at some point. And in the long term, if we think about his long term, Taylor Ward expiring contract, right? And you never really know what trade could happen. If that means Heston is part of a trade, if that means somebody else is part of a trade, and Heston is given a future in Baltimore, I think we'll figure that out down the line. But at this very moment in time, having a controllable outfielder who can be optioned to AAA and who you believe in his bat, that's a good thing.
This is what I think is going to happen March 26th versus the Minnesota Twins opening day. I think regardless, you are going to see Taylor Ward in left, Colton Cowser in center. And do they do a John Lowenstein, Gary Renicky style Earl Weaver platoon in right field with Dylan Beavers and Tyler O'Neill? I mean, am I getting warm?
Yeah, I think you'd probably see that trio, and then basically it's Beavers and O'Neill platooning. If O'Neill technically would be the shorter side of that platoon as the right-handed hitter, against lefties. There's just fewer lefties. But I do think if O'Neill is hitting as well as he is right now, he's going to face righties as well. But in some platoon capacity, they will figure out 4 days, first 3 days, for Beavers and O'Neill. Plus, you can put O'Neill at the DH, every once in a while, and have Beavers in right field. So I think it'll be a rotation. Really, I wouldn't even be surprised to see Leody Taveras actually on the opening day roster either, and going with 5
I said
outfielders.
that too, actually.
Yeah, purely because I think
too.
they feel maybe a little bit better about having a natural center fielder on the bench in case of need.
Andy, if you could be so kind before we end the show today, I want you to tell the folks, hey, where we could find Andy Kostka. Again, the Orioles beat writer, Baltimore Banner. When can we catch you?
Yeah, if you look up the Baltimore Banner, all my stories are on there. Subscribe for, I think it's $1 for 6 months, and then it does get more pricey after that, but it does pay my rent. So please help me out there.
Absolutely.
I'm also I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky as well, so you can follow me on either of those platforms.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I just wanted to let our audience know, if they want, really smart analysis, where to go. On this show, the only thing we do is tell each other how wrong we are all day. So, but in any event, Andy Kostka, wow, graciously appreciate you take some time out of your very busy schedule, and I know it's a very busy schedule, to spend a little time with us. If you could be so kind, Andy Kostka, please come back. Maybe sometime during the season. Again, I can assure you the fans are going to be thrilled to see this episode. For Michael Sullivan and Matt Faulkner, I'm Joe Rossano. Joe Rossano's Orioles Report. I always say, God bless you. Please don't forget to adopt a pet. Thank you so much, Andy Kostka. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.